All praises to the Most High, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Raha Kodash. Double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations to the hopeful elect, scattered throughout the four corners of the earth, laboring in his truth in all sincerity. Habakkuk, chapter 1, verses 5 through 8, KJV. Behold, ye among the heathen, and regard and wonder marvelously, for I will work a work in your days, which ye will not believe, though it be told to you. For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses also are swifter than the leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from afar. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. This will be the fourth part of a 7-part series titled 7 Symptoms of Babylon's Impending Doom. This video will deal with the U.S.'s overextended military. We're going to start by going to this particular website here. This website is known as worldbeyondwar.org. Military Empires, a visual guide to foreign bases. And I'm just going to read the first sentence here and then scroll down a little bit. Many countries operate foreign military bases. The U.S. by far operates the most, with 877 military bases around the world. So we'll do a little comparing and contrasting at this point. The United States, 877 bases in 95 countries. The UK has 117 military bases in 38 countries. India, 20 bases, 12 countries. Russia, 29 bases in 10 countries. Turkey, 133 bases in 9 countries. Singapore, 11 bases, 7 countries. China, 6 bases, 6 countries. UAE, 12 and 5. France, 7 and 4. Canada, 4 and 4. Netherlands, 4 and 3. Saudi Arabia, 2 bases in 2 countries. Australia, 2 bases in 2 countries. Italy, 2 bases in 2 countries. The State of Israel, 14 bases in 1 country. Iran, 1 base, 1 country. Bangladesh, 1 base, 1 country. Pakistan, 1 base, 1 country. Japan has 1 military base in 1 country. So with that being said, we're going to also take a quick look at how many U.S. embassies are throughout the world. The U.S. has approximately 270 to 276 diplomatic and consular posts around the world, including embassies, consulates, and permanent missions to international organizations. As of mid-2024, these include 11 permanent missions to international organizations, 272 bilateral posts, embassies and consulates in 174 countries, and 7 other posts. And according to Google AI Overview, these U.S. embassies support the U.S. military by serving as a liaison between the military and the Department of State, which provide a diplomatic front for military activities and coordinating security and administrative support. So once again, we saw that the U.S. has 877 bases in 95 countries and between 270 to 276 embassies and consulates all over the world. So now we could take a look back at Habakkuk chapter 1, verses 6 through 8. Verse 6, For lo, I raise up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, which shall march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. The Chaldeans are the elite ruling class who rule over the supposed elected officials of this country. They would be that shadow government that was spoken of by JFK and shown in, I believe it was part 3 of this particular video series titled Political Corruption and Instability. Verse 6 of Habakkuk chapter 1 states, Yahweh will raise up the Chaldeans, which will march through the breadth of the land to possess the dwelling places that are not theirs. And just in the last century, we've seen this country use its military to occupy places all throughout the Middle East, parts of Asia, Africa, South America, and the Caribbean. None of this was done peacefully, as verses 7 and 8 state. They are terrible and dreadful. Their judgment and their dignity shall proceed of themselves. Their horses also are swifter than leopards, and are more fierce than the evening wolves. And their horsemen shall spread themselves, and their horsemen shall come from afar. They shall fly as the eagle that hasteth to eat. And they've been able to set up these 877 bases in 95 countries along with 270 embassies, all for the sake of American imperialism. This is the whore that sitteth upon many waters, as pursuant to Revelation chapter 17. We'll start from verse 1. Revelation chapter 17. And there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come up hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, for the names of blasphemy, full of the names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet-colored, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And her forehead was a name written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And we'll scroll down to verse 15 real fast here. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. As of March 2025, the total number of U.S. military members was approximately 2.86 million. This includes active duty, reserve, and civilian personnel. Of this amount, approximately 86% are stationed in the U.S., with approximately 166,000 stationed overseas. That 166,000 refers to members who are actually stationed overseas, not those who are sent on temporary deployments. So this country's military maintains a significant military presence in foreign countries, even in so-called peace times. As of March 2025, 1.3 million total military members were overseas. That's 1.3 million out of 2.86 million total. That 1.3 million represents those who are on temporary deployments, so that number always fluctuates. But as we can see back in March, that 1.3 million out of 2.86 million was almost 50%. So what I want to do now is go into an individual on Twitter. I don't necessarily follow him on Twitter, but I do keep up with his posts because he is very knowledgeable on things going on with the U.S. military. And this is this individual right here. His name is Douglas McGregor. And as you can see from his bio, he's a retired U.S. Army colonel, combat veteran, the advisor of the Secretary of Defense, author, consultant, military TV analyst, chairman of the advisory board. His website is ourcountry.ourchoice.com. Once again, his name is Douglas McGregor. And I want to read one of his tweets. Let's start with Warfare has changed. We have large numbers of forces forward deployed around the world, and they are essentially sitting ducks. This should be addressed immediately with the direction we are headed. And he put that tweet up approximately 12 days ago on October the 5th. So, as he stated, warfare has changed. America is no longer the lone superpower. And with the tanking economy, you have to factor in getting necessary supplies and reinforcements to military who are stationed globally overseas. So let's take a look at the escalating conflicts and go to another post from Douglas McGregor. We'll go into this one here. It's a pretty long post. He titled it "The Insurgency Calculus." It's pretty long. I'm only going to read the first 2 paragraphs. Washington's ruling class may view Venezuela as its best shot at recovering the trillions in American wealth that was squandered on strategic failures in the Middle East and Ukraine. Its vast resources, oil, gas, gold, and bauxite, are the prize. Yet, the American track record in Latin America is profoundly troubling. In the first half of the 20th century, U.S. forces invaded Cuba 3 times, only to supervise elections and draft a constitution that ultimately guaranteed decades of anti-American resentment. Will the Venezuela militia members and surviving armed forces elements cooperate with Washington's plan to loot and exploit resources, or will they coalesce into a persistent insurgency? Worse, will tens of thousands of paramilitary forces from neighboring Latin American countries, Colombia and Brazil, 2 countries with which it shares 1,370 plus mile borders, migrate across porous borders to support a popular insurgency against the U.S. military presence? We must also consider how millions of Latinos living inside America's borders will react to images of U.S. military intervention. So we see a conflict brewing in which the U.S. has their sights set on Venezuela's resources, oil, gas, gold, and bauxite, which I do believe is used to make aluminum, or at least it aids in that particular process, if I'm correct. They'll publicly say it's because of cartels moving drugs into the U.S., but U.S. imperialism is always about taking resources while expanding its territory and influence. And then, of course, we still have that lingering conflict between Israel and Iran. And I'm going to remain here with these tweets from Douglas McGregor. His tweet here states, Israel plan to attack Iran will become the main event. Iran has made it clear it won't submit to Israel. What's next? So, with that question, what's next? We'll read Jeremiah 50 and 45. Jeremiah 50 and 45 states, Therefore hear ye the counsel of Yahweh Bashem and Yahushai, that he hath taken against Babylon, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. Surely the least of the flock will draw them out. We know the least of the flock does represent the state of Israel. It's a small nation, supposedly with only 14 million total wish all throughout the world. We know Babylon will come to the state of Israel's aid with the troops, money, weapons, and all the protection they can give. And this is what it's meant by surely the least of the flock will draw them out, regarding Israel's imminent attack on Iran. And of course, obviously, we still have the ongoing war with Russia and Ukraine, in which Douglas McGregor put up a tweet on October 5th stating, if Ukraine uses Tomahawk missiles, we will be at war within hours. So let's take a look here and see exactly what this video is about.
Multiple war games, and everyone loses. If a Tomahawk missile lands in the outskirts of Moscow or Ryazan or Kazan or any of these places, he's going to be at war with Russia. And that war could rapidly escalate to the nuclear level. And once you hit the nuclear level, you have almost no control. We know that from experience in multiple war games, and everyone loses.
So basically what he's stating here is the warning that Putin gave Trump, which was if you give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles and Ukraine uses them against us, which is Russia, there will be consequences. He's basically stating, Putin is basically stating that Russia will be forced to defend themselves and take action against NATO, the EU nations, and even potentially the US itself for supplying Ukraine those Tomahawk missiles. So besides all of the escalating conflicts overseas, we have to think about the ramifications here in this country. And this should be the last tweet I'm going to go back into. We're going to go back into the insurgency calculus here. I just want to focus on the very last sentence in which he said, this was the last sentence of the second paragraph, "We must also consider how millions of Latinos living inside America's borders will react to the images of U.S. military intervention." But it won't just be Latinos and Hispanics, so to speak. There's a growing Ishmaelite population and Moabite population as well in this country. Civil unrest is stirring right here in Babylon. The possibility of a destabilized society leading to civil war is coming to fruition. Fighting wars on multiple fronts while simultaneously supporting the state of Israel and Ukraine's war efforts is not conducive to maintaining a nation's security. It actually has the opposite effect, especially when facing civil war in the streets here. This country has brought in a lot of its enemies by the millions. Millions of military-aged men with no intentions of assimilating have come in from the lands of Moab, Ham, Ishmael, and Elam, just to name a few. Many of these men may indeed just be seeking better opportunities, but you can't rule out that many may be operatives for their home countries or even so-called UN peacekeepers. Because you can't depend on this country's military to turn its guns on its white population, but Moab, Ishmael, Ham, and Elam would have no problems doing such. Just a thought. Nonetheless, when people from other countries are waving their native flags, that is not a representation of this great melting pot that this country advertises. Instead, it's a sign of being invaded. And with that being said, we're going to take a look at something that two former presidents stated. We have Abraham Lincoln and Dwight D. Eisenhower. We'll start with Eisenhower. In 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower discussed the concern that a nation's internal defense measures could weaken it, asking, "The problem in defense is how far you can go without destroying from within what you are trying to defend from without." He later echoed this sentiment in his 1961 farewell address, warning about the military-industrial complex and the potential for misplaced power to undermine American freedoms and democratic processes. He stressed the importance of an alert and knowledgeable citizenry to prevent this powerful structure from eroding the nation's core values. The key phrase there is he stresses the importance of an alert and knowledgeable citizenry. And we know that from even going back to my second video in this particular series with the social and cultural decay, based on the amount of reality TV and the degenerate music and movies and even fashion, the excessive tattooing, just this nonstop degeneracy that this country pushes with a media that never gives you the full truth or even half of that particular truth. they basically push an agenda on you, so that this is not really a knowledgeable and alert citizenry. You know, of course, you have the men of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai who do understand, based through biblical prophecy, exactly what's going on right now. And then you also do have, I guess you would say, the so-called truthers or conspiracy theorists. You know, a lot of them are actually in the know right now about what is going on. But the greater masses pretty much don't fall into this category. You can go on any social media platform right now and you'll see the number of women who still take pictures showing their butt cheeks first, smiling second. It used to be, you know, women would just take regular pictures smiling. Now they don't do that anymore. They show you their butt cracks now. That's their smile. It's a sideways smile, so to speak. And also, we'll take a look at what President Lincoln said, because I could go on and on off topic about what Dwight D. Eisenhower said about the importance of an alert and knowledgeable citizenry. But we'll also take a look at what Lincoln said. And I am going to start this from, shall we expect some transatlantic military giant to step in the ocean and crush us at a blow? Never. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined, with all the treasures of the earth, our own excepted, in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio, or make a track on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years. So this is basically Abraham Lincoln stating this country, because of its geographical location, you have the Atlantic on this side, you have the Pacific on this side. To the north, you have an ally in Canada. To the south, you have a supposed ally in Mexico. But he goes on to say, at which point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of freemen, we must live through all time or die by suicide. So both former presidents acknowledged the only way this country could fall was from within. That goes back to what I was stating earlier about this country bringing in millions of military-aged men with no intentions of assimilating. So they didn't come here by force. They were invited in. So let's take a look at two scriptures that came to mind when I read that. The first being Jeremiah 51:14. Yahweh of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. Caterpillars, they normally burrow their way into a fruit, such as an apple, and they eat their way out. The caterpillar gets inside first and then devours. We can also take a look at 2nd Esdras, if I'm correct. 2nd Esdras 15:30. I'm sorry, chapter 15, verses 28 through 30. Behold, an horrible vision, and the appearance thereof from the east, where the nations of the dragons of Arabia shall come out with many chariots, and the multitude of them shall be carried as the wind upon earth, that all they which hear them may fear and tremble. Also the Carmanians, raging in wrath, shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them, and shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. So when I say that this country has brought in millions of its enemies, And just like Jeremiah 51 and 14, where the Most High said, let's go back to that so I don't get that incorrect. Yahweh of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. Your enemies are already inside. You have sleeper cells. You have men over here who have no intentions of assimilating. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, they're already inside. It's kind of like that movie Cape Fear. Have you ever seen the 1991 version of Cape Fear, where counselor hired, I guess, a detective or a cop to basically sit and stand guard against Max Cady, but Max Cady was already in the house. But there's, the detective, he set up a bunch of like fishing wires all throughout the house with bells set on them and stuff, so that, if one of these fishing wires were tripped, that would mean someone was trying to get in. He would be alerted by the bell, and then he would get the drop on Max Cady. But that's not what happened. Max Cady was already inside the house. So I just used that little movie analogy to show you exactly what Jeremiah 51 and 14 is stating. Like I mentioned, that those caterpillars, they burrow their way inside of a fruit and then they devour their way out. And that's also what we're seeing in 2nd Esdras 15, 28, and 30. We'll go back there again. Also the Carmanians raging in wrath shall go forth as the wild boars of the wood, and with great power shall they come and join battle with them. Join battle with the dragons of Arabia, as seen in verse 29. And they shall waste a portion of the land of the Assyrians. So we are living and witnessing prophecy coming to pass. And it can't be delayed. It can't be canceled. It won't be postponed. It's not going to be called off or retracted or rescinded or revoked. And it's not going to be overruled. And we understand that because we understand what Isaiah 55 and 11 says. Isaiah 55 and 11. So shall my word be that goeth forth out of my mouth. It shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. So prophecy is unfolding right before our eyes, just as the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai said it would, exactly the way he said it. So I believe that's Isaiah chapter 46, declaring the end from the beginning. So all praises to the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, and we pray for this destruction. We don't want Babylon to continue. We yearn to see the kingdom of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, because we know that's a more righteous kingdom. If you're here right now and you're wanting Babylon to prosper, and you're wanting Babylon to just keep going on and on and on forever, then it's a good possibility, a very strong possibility, that you are most definitely not of the hopeful elect, because there's no way you can be of the elect and you're still hoping for Babylon to prosper. So as we see these prophecies playing out, we get excited. We get excited by watching. These are very exciting times here. Things that, that I don't really want to go off topic here, but when you're watching the MOTB, which we know to be the RFID micro C-HIP, we're watching these things play out, so we know it's just a matter of time now. So back to the original topic, though, the U.S. military being overextended. And so that's not just overseas. We're seeing how it's starting to become overextended right here stateside. More and more National Guard are being deployed across the country, various cities. So social arrest and civil war are basically upon this country. And with the U.S. military engaging in foreign conflicts, basically on the brink of World War III, and you're still falling short of recruitment goals, and you can basically see the end of this kingdom. Just like Jeremiah 51, 1 and 2 basically state. If we go to Jeremiah 51, 1 and 2, like I said, the Most High's word does not come back void, but Jeremiah 51, 1 and 2. Thus saith Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise against me a destroying wind, and will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. Once again, those are those caterpillars. Those fanners, those men are already inside. They've already been invited in. So once again, all praises to the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, because we can see this kingdom is collapsing here. But we do know that, of course, the men of Babylon, they're not going to just lay down. So not just their military, but, some of those more patriotic citizens, they'll start to take up arms as well, But unfortunately for them, they won't just be fighting a foreign invasion. They'll be trying to fight against prophecy itself. They're fighting against the word of Yahweh Bashem and Yahweh Shai, which they're going to lose and lose miserably, like I once heard Apostle Tahar say. So as we've already read in Isaiah 55 and 11, the Most High's word never comes back void. So I want to jump down to verses 30 and 32, or verses 30 through 32 at this particular time here. Jeremiah 51, verses 30 through 32, and let's read this in the NLT. Her mightiest warriors no longer fight. They stay in their barracks, their courage gone. They have become like women. The invaders have burned the houses and broken down the city gates. The news is passed from one runner to the next as the messengers hurry to tell the king that this city has been captured. All the escape routes are blocked. The marshes have been set aflame, and the army is in panic. Babylon's doom is at hand. And this is because of your abuse towards the apple of the Most High's eye. That is going to be your undoing. Let's jump into Zechariah 1 and 15. And I'll read this in both the KJV and NLT. Zechariah 1 and 15, KJV first. And I am very sore displeased with the heathen that are at ease. For I was but a little displeased, and they helped forward the affliction. NLT. But I am very angry with the other nations that are now enjoying peace and security. I was only a little angry with my people, but the nations inflicted harm on them far beyond my intentions. Let's go back into 2 Esdras 15 and 21. Like as they do, yet this day until my chosen, so will I do also, and recompense in their bosom. Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. So that's basically your ass, Babylon. Your treatment of the 12 tribes of Israel, starting with the elect. This is the Most High's. We are the apple of his eye. And it's your treatment against the 12 tribes and your continued treatment. This wasn't something that you did in the past and you stopped. You're still unrepentant, in your treatment. So that's basically what the Most High Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai is saying in Zechariah 15 and also in 2 Esdras 15 and 21, but I'll read Zechariah 1 and 15 again in the NLT. But I am very angry with the other nations that are now enjoying peace and security. I was only a little angry with my people, but the nations inflicted harm on them far beyond my intentions. So it's about to be a wrap for this country. It's about to be a wrap for this government. It's about to be a wrap for all the nations. But let's get back into the actual video topic. I'll be wrapping up in just a few moments here. So with the 4 major branches of the military, Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, they're all having recruitment issues. They're all overspread. 5 branches, actually, if you want to include the Coast Guard. They're all going to be catching hell anyway. But I want to briefly touch on the new 6th branch of the military, Space Force. So let me read a couple of things here about Space Force. I'm not going to get too much into this because this is going to be very short-lived. This is going to be something that is going to be almost comical. Abba Ratazar willing, I get the chance to see what happens with Space Force. But let's get into this for a second. So I typed in how many members in Space Force. The U.S. Space Force has approximately 9,400 active duty members and more than 14,000 military and civilian guardians overall. Those specific figures can vary slightly by source and date. This total includes both uniformed personnel and civilian employees who support the service's mission. And I was curious about their weaponry, their technology. The U.S. Space Force is developing a range of weapons, including direct energy weapons like lasers, ground-based and space-based jamming systems, kinetic weapons like missiles and rockets for both ground-based and orbital use. These weapons are being developed to counter threats in space and protect U.S. assets with a focus on direct energy, electromagnetic, and kinetic capabilities. Let's read that again. These weapons are being developed to counter threats in space. These weapons are being developed to counter threats in space. One last time, these weapons are being developed to counter threats in space. They really think they can stand up and fight against Yahweh Shiny Angels. You can't fight against Yahweh Shiny Angels no matter how many silly movies you try to make. Independence Day, War of the Worlds, where somehow the Earthlings always beat this super technologically advanced alien race. That's not going to happen with Yahweh Shiny Angels. So these weapons that are being developed for counter threats in space, you guys watch too many movies because you don't stand a chance against Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shiny Angels. Those chariots are going to dismantle this place in 1 hour. 1 hour, and that's in the scriptures. But the whore that sitteth upon many waters are going to try anyway, and I can only pray I'm watching and celebrating the destruction of Babylon as pursuant to Psalms 91 and 8. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. So I'll end this with Jeremiah chapter 51 and 13. Jeremiah 51 and 13, and it reads, and I'll read this in both the KJV and the NLT. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. You are a city by a great river, a great city of commerce, but your end has come. The thread of your life is cut. I pray that this has been edifying and reaches the ears it's supposed to reach. Shalom.